Same energy. Work on being better when I'm 70. Your drip is just a water spring. You know I drip different, just the 7 C's. I deal with life different, make that lemon squeeze. Went off for my style and identity. Better bounce back and get the cheddar cheese. I guess that's why they envy me. On track, now we going way up. W's as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up. Counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Good early morning. It is October the 16th. And already having technical issues. Go figure. Oh. I know why. Let's move this over here. There we go. Hope everybody had a fantastic day today. I just wanted to come on and relax. No, nothing really going on. I just kind of like to get some rate dailies done and see what's happened in the true crime news today and the whole high profile cases that are going on, notable updates that are happening kind of here, there, and everywhere. So maybe we could watch some of that while we do a few raid dailies. My name is Hio Sandra Firelight. Feel free to come in. If you're so inclined, hit the like button. Building my channel organically at this time. So if you feel like helping me grow, consider subscribing to the channel.
Alright, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say and can will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have the present with you while you're being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before any questionings if you wish. Alright. You good, dude?
All right. There are a few things that came out today on the news that I saw that I was kind of uh, curious about. The first one is Susan Smith. I'm sure most of us that are old enough to remember Susan Smith knows that she is the convicted mother in 1995 of drowning her two children in the car. And today I saw, we know that she's supposedly getting ready for uh, parole hearing soon, and she got into some kind of trouble this week. So I want to look that up and see if we can find that and see what her disciplinary charge was. Um, yeah, see if we can find that. Back over here. Looks like, yeah, there's a couple of different things from a couple of hours ago.
Now to some new developments tonight regarding Susan Smith. She's that Union County woman who drowned her two small sons in John D. Long Lake nearly 30 years ago. Just 3 weeks before she's eligible for parole, we're learning that Smith has been disciplined for violating Department of Corrections policies. Smith lost her telephone, tablet, and canteen privileges for 90 days following an internal hearing earlier this month. The Department of Corrections saying that Smith used a phone and tablet to communicate with a documentary filmmaker about her crimes. We're also being told that Smith agreed to be interviewed and provide the filmmaker contact information for several people, including her former husband, David Smith, seen there. Smith is now serving life in prison at Leith Correctional Institution near Greenwood after being convicted of killing her two young sons, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex, back in 1994. After serving 30 years, she will be eligible for parole in 3 weeks, November 4th, although a date for a parole hearing has not yet been set.
To me, it doesn't feel. Whoa, whoa, whoa. To me, it doesn't feel like it's been 30 years. Isn't it crazy? Does it feel like 30 years? A long time. All right, let's see what Court TV had to say. This looks like it was about a month ago. And talks to her ex-husband, David Smith, about the upcoming parole hearing, losing his children as Suzanne's never-ending lies. If I remember correctly, I think he was like standing beside her for a long time after the after she was arrested. Let's watch this.
This morning, we're spotlighting new reaction to Susan Smith's upcoming parole eligibility. The convicted killer became infamous after drowning her two young sons and then trying to mislead the public into thinking that they had been kidnapped. Her husband at the time, David Smith, was by her side supporting her until she confessed. Now, David has been quiet for years about the case, but he recently gave us an exclusive interview talking about her upcoming parole hearing and how he's doing today.
I don't think I'm any more of a suspect than anyone in this case right now.
It's very painful to know that anyone would think that either of us had anything to do with this abduction of our children.
He looked so innocent and young, and like he really believed in her. That's just sad. That's so sad.
David, how do you feel about Susan wanting you to advocate for her prison release?
I think it's absurd. I can't comprehend that she even thinks that I would advocate for her.
When was the last time you talked to her?
It was about a month after she confessed and was arrested. I saw her at a prison in Colombia where she was being held at the time.
Has she tried to contact you then, since then, rather?
No, I've had no contact with Susan since that one time. We spoke for about an hour that day, and I haven't talked to her since.
David, do you plan to attend her parole hearing?
I absolutely do.
Well, yeah, he absolutely would attend her parole hearing to stand up for his two children that were taken from him 30 years ago. It's ridiculous. His kids ought to be, like 31 and 32 now, or 32 and 33. And for her to believe that he would advocate for her parole and he hasn't even talked to her during those years is absolutely absurd.
I'm for sure going to be there.
Would you give us a little bit of a preview of what you plan to tell the board?
At this time, I don't even know if I'm going to even write something formally on paper. I may just...
That whistling is definitely on his end, folks.
speak from the heart, but I just want them to know or remind them of what she did. Who were the victims in this case? Certainly not her. And to let them know that her only doing 30 years would be an injustice to Michael and Alex. She doesn't deserve to ever be free again.
David, would you tell us a little bit about your beautiful boys, Michael and Alex?
Well, Julie, unfortunately, I still do not have a lot of memories of Michael and Alex. Early on, I sought professional help, and all of them told me the same thing, that eventually the memories would come back. But at the time, it was my own system taking care of me and not letting me have any memories of them. It was protecting me. Well, here it is almost 30 years, and those memories haven't come back yet. I have bits and pieces, like giving them bath time with them and playing in the yard a little bit. And like Michael used to ride on the lawnmower with me, cutting grass, and he'd always go to sleep. So I have some snippets, snapshots of memory, but I don't have very many, unfortunately.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much.
David, how do you feel now about the cruel way in which Susan lied to you then?
After a lot of thinking and soul searching, I wish I had seen what other people were seeing at the time.
So the way he talks about not being able to remember much of the children leads me to believe he probably has blocked out mentally a lot of the things that happened with Susan during that time as well, in my opinion. So he probably doesn't remember. I mean, 30 years. How many of us remember what we were doing, in precise moments 30 years ago? Of course, this is a traumatic situation, but yeah, I can't imagine.
But I just wanted to get Michael and Alex back. That was my main concern.
Tell us, have you forgiven Susan? And if so, why?
Yes, I've forgiven her. And again, that goes to my faith in God, and that's the way I was raised, that we have to forgive. But it sure doesn't take away the act of what she did. It doesn't make it any less. It doesn't make it any easier. But I have forgiven her for what she did.
Tell us, if Susan were here listening to this interview, what message would you have for her?
I am wondering why he even did this interview. He seems so detached from the situation. So detached from the situation. And obviously, if you look on the wall behind him where it says Smith, it says Tiffany and Savannah David. Obviously, he has built a family and a new life since this situation. So it just, besides the, I don't know why he would have agreed to do this interview.
I would just tell her that you have no idea of how much damage you have done to so many people. I would tell her that in my capabilities, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you stay behind bars.
This court stands adjourned.
I want to bring in the man who put away Susan Smith, attorney Tommy Pope. Tommy, would you walk us, please, through the legal process? What's going to happen next in this quest for parole?
So what's happened, and you and I have discussed this before, the jury didn't know that life didn't mean life, but now that there's been 30 years, because they did find the aggravating circumstances of killing two underage children, killing two or more at one time. So she's now eligible. There'll be a hearing probably October. David and I are still trying to coordinate with Solicitor Brackett on the dates and, all of that. And then basically it's kind of a mini hearing. They hear aggravation and mitigation.
So if makeup is not allowed in prison, which I've just recently learned with with the Sarah Boone trial, how in the world did she get all of this makeup on her face? And look, her eyebrows are look threaded. She looks like she's wearing lip gloss. I don't know. Her hair, I mean, of course you can brush her hair, and it's going, a little bit gray after all this time. But she really does look like she's wearing makeup. I don't know. Are there people out there that could tell me how they get this? Are they melting down chest pieces for eye mascara and threading each other's eyebrows in there?
They'll hear, what David's got to say. I want to tell them how the jury believed that she was going to serve the rest of her natural life. I'm with David. We knew it was going to be an uphill battle, particularly with the union jury, but we try to respect their decision. We just wish they'd been armed with all the knowledge, because I remember jurors saying, she would sit and think about Michael and Alex, where her conduct's proven she hadn't done that. And she's been more worried, and I don't think I'm misspeaking here in front of David. She's always been more worried about Susan than she is anybody else, and that's been the case throughout.
Right, Tommy. And she has had a pretty bad prison record, as far as I'm aware, hasn't she, Tommy, with misconduct with guards and believe drug use has also been reported. Is that correct?
She has had, I think, like we discussed before, I've seen much worse. I've seen them killing people in prison, but her behavior tells us that contrary to what that jury was thinking, which was you'll be remorseful, you'll think about Michael and Alex, Susan thinks about how things affect Susan.
Whoever has them, I pray every day that you're taking care of them and know that we will do anything we will to help you to get them home back to us.
And David, I want to ask you now about what your life is like. I understand you have your wife, Tiffany, with you that you'd like to introduce to us. Would you bring her in, please?
I sure will. This is Tiffany, my wife.
And you have children together, right?
We do. We have a daughter together, and then I have a son by someone else.
Our daughter is 23, so we have the empty nest going on. So we spend.
He looks genuinely happy. He looks genuinely happy. They look like they have a good life. I mean, of course, looks can be deceiving. It's only, 5-minute interview or whatever, but he looks genuinely happy.
We spend a lot of time, just work, and then we come home and he cooks supper. He does a lot of the cooking. He helps me out a lot. I would try and push him to get out of bed and, go do things. And he just wanted to sleep a lot. I call those the dark years. But, over the years, I would try to push him to do things to try to get his spirits up and get him out of the house or, just to do different things. And then, as the years have gone by, things have gotten easier and, he doesn't have as many dark days anymore. So it's life is really good.
And I want to thank David and Tiffany Smith and attorney Tommy Pope. And you can watch even more of that interview. My full uncut conversation with David Smith and his wife will be posted to Court TV's members only channel. So just click to join if you haven't already. And still to come here on Opening Statements, what could tip the scales at Susan Smith's parole hearing? I've got a special guest joining me next to break it all down.
Did she ever believe that she was ever going to get away with it?
It's kind of crazy to me that they say that the jury at the time didn't understand that life meant life. I guess I understand. Maybe it was different. Different for the jury instruction back then, but interesting.
So what will tip the scales when Susan Smith goes before the parole board? Her ex-husband, David Smith, says he's going to be there at the hearing. And Tommy Pope, who prosecuted Susan Smith, says that David always put his boys, Michael and Alex, first.
We brought those boys back to life, and then we had to take them back through and take him back through exactly what he lived through. I remember that first video we talked about when Susan's giggling about being on TV and David looked like he'd lost his children. So when he tells you that all he was focused on was finding those kids, that was exactly correct.
It's horrible what was done to those children, those little boys that had their whole life ahead of them. Joining me now this morning, a very special guest. I'm so pleased to welcome in. He's a legal analyst for ABC News, a former prosecutor, Matt Murphy. Matt, good morning to you. What do you think this hearing is going to be like for Susan Smith?
So in California, we call these BPT lifer hearings. And this is essentially a process. It's like the things you see on TV, where they bring the person in and they sit in a chair. She'll have an attorney there, and there'll be a board of parole. So there'll be 2, 3, sometimes 4 representatives of the board of prison terms, and they'll hear the reasons in favor of her release, and then they will consider the circumstances of the offense and hear people that oppose it. And then they'll make their call. And I can tell you, I did these for 17 years in the state of California. There's no way she's getting out. If I had to lay my Vegas odds on this one, it's 1,000 to 1.
Matt, we sure hope you are right. Let's talk a little bit about Susan's bad behavior, if we can, please. I mean, she has had a bad prison record, as you know, a number of infractions committed behind bars. She used drugs.
She said, let's talk about her bad behavior. Now, I have not kept up with Susan Smith over the years, so I guess this is all going to be a surprise to me, too.
She had sex with prison guards.
Oh my gosh.
Issues relating to threats of self-harm. She lost many privileges for all of her infractions, lost her phone, lost visitation privileges. She has not shown that she can conform to the rules. Talk to us a little bit, please, about at the eligibility hearing, how the board will consider her record when they go to make that determination if she should get out.
So there are essentially three areas that weigh very heavily in circumstances like this. One is the offense itself. How bad were the circumstances of it? And this is about as bad as it gets. This wasn't a woman suffering from postpartum depression. The jury rejected that defense. This is somebody that killed her kids so that she could be with another man. Okay, so it's about as cold-blooded as you get. And also, what a horrible way to die, you know, and we're talking about two really young children. The second big consideration is how the community is responding to this. And I mean, we just heard from your two previous guests. Oh my gosh, you know, that is going to move them substantially. And then three, and perhaps most importantly, depending on which member of the board is considering it, you have their behavior in prison. So in California, these are called 115s or in custody write-ups. And she didn't just have sex with one prison guard, she had sex with two.
Really? What is wrong with the prison guards? What happened to them? Did they get charged, I hope? What in the hell?
And this is a woman who has continued to display the kind of behavior, the totally selfish, rules don't apply to me kind of behavior that led her to committing this murder in the first place. And I think that, you know, she has demonstrated that she is not trustworthy. She's not capable of following the rules, and they will consider that a potential danger in the community if they release her. So again, this board is going to look very harshly on her prison conduct, on the circumstance of the offense, and the community, of course, would be outraged. So this is called an initial. We call those initials in California. In other words, it's her very first hearing. And when you, as a prosecutor, when you attend these and you have an initial, the first thing you look for are those 115s or those write-ups while in custody. And she's got some doozies. So, yeah, this is not going to bode well for her. Remember, they can keep her.
That being said, with her write-ups, I wonder, because like they said, the jury didn't understand what life actually meant life. I wonder if Susan understood that life didn't mean life. Or didn't think that she would get to the 30 years before she was eligible for parole. I mean, those years do pass by.
Her for her entire life. My guess is she's not getting out the next time either. And South Carolina, look, they do it right. They're very compassionate towards the victims, in my opinion. And I think that she has very long odds of any sort of success here.
Right, right. Matt, something that troubled Prosecutor Tommy Pope, it has for years, we just spoke about it recently, was how during the trial, and the state did pursue the death penalty, as you know, the jury voted life. Tommy said what was troubling was the way the court had to instruct the jury was not to let them know that she could be up for parole. So they thought life meant her whole life. And now looking back, it's 30 years. It's not life. That's very upsetting. Your feelings on that as a very seasoned prosecutor, I would imagine you'd probably be very troubled as well.
Well, I've made that argument before on death penalty cases. I did 6 of them, and the defense always wants a special instruction to the jury that, ladies and gentlemen, she will never be released. And we're seeing the exact same thing in California now, where life without possibility of parole doesn't actually mean life without possibility of parole anymore. And in effect, from my perspective, having done that before, and from his perspective, it's essentially a lie to the jury. And had these people known that she would be up for parole, that she would have to, you know, that the family would have to go through this process over and over.
I'm just going to say this, and I probably shouldn't. This man had more wrinkles on his forehead when he was younger than he does now. I know it's dumb.
Doesn't actually mean life without possibility of parole anymore. And in effect, from my perspective, having done that before, and from his perspective, it's essentially a lie to the jury. And had these people known that she would be up for parole, that she would have to, that the family would have to go through this process over and over, because she'll be up again. Once this is denied, they can do multi-year denials, but it'll be within probably 5 years she'll be up again, and the family's going to have to go through it all over again. So it is very frustrating as a prosecutor when you're up there on a horrific case and the jury's receiving information. You know that it's not accurate and you can't say anything. So I understand his frustration with that. But at the end of the day, look, 30 years is also, 3 decades behind bars. I personally don't think it's enough for Susan Smith. I know a lot of people agree with me on that, but the parole board won't either. So they're going to deny this.
Right. Such excellent analysis from you, as always. It's such a treat to have you on Opening Statements, Matt Murphy. And I want to let everyone know you've got a book coming out. It's called The Book of Murder, coming out on September 17th. There it is, a prosecutor's journey through love and death. We can't wait to read it. And congratulations on the release, Matt.
Okay, there's that. There is that. Okay, so everybody that I have seen on YouTube has been talking about Quentin Simon's case. I have not had a chance to actually watch the trial, but I did want to catch up on this court TV. 7 days ago, Vinnie Politan put out a... Here we go. Turn this back on over here. 7 days ago, Vinnie Politan put out a little thing on this case, and I definitely want to review this, and I wanted to see how the case has gone for the first 2 days, but it's just a lot. I think they're doing it like 8 and 10 hours a day, so I just kind of have to... it just looks like I'm going to have to kind of go through it, little by little. Let's see about this. So look, this it looks like it premiered October the 8th, so just a couple of days ago. The trial started not yesterday, but the day before on Columbus Day on Monday, right? So wow. Let's see what he has to say.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the tragic story of a little 20-month-old boy from Georgia named Quentin Simon. Now, once you see a picture of this little guy, you will wonder how anyone could bring harm to him. But I
feel like it's fair to note that this is a very tragic case, and it's a scary case for some people, and the people who have not been involved in it from the very beginning. I'm learning right now myself, so I'm definitely going to put this out here as a trigger warning. If you don't know about the Quentin Simon case, it's definitely a good idea. Then you're triggered by small children and the things that happen with them at their mother's hands. Then feel safe not to watch this part right here.
someone did. Here's his story. 20-month-old Quentin Simon was living with his grandparents, his mother Leilani, and her boyfriend. On October 5th, 2022 at 9:40 a.m., there was a call to 911 to report this little boy missing. The investigation began as a missing person.
Oh, that's just the cutest face in the whole planet. Look at that baby. 20 months old. He wasn't even 2 yet, and they're so much fun at that age. They're so cute.
Person's case. Was this an abducted child? Did little Quentin sneak away into the nearby woods? Soon, the investigation would change. It became a homicide investigation, with Quentin's mom as the prime suspect. Then the true crime community spotlight started to shine on Leilani and her family. Protesters began to gather outside of their home, demanding answers and making accusations. The police investigation continued and led to an expansive search of a landfill. Eventually, remains of Quentin were found. Leilani was arrested, locked up, and charged with his murder. And now a jury and the public will hear the evidence that hopefully answers all those questions about what happened to little Quentin Simon.
That baby looked just like his mama. Just like his mama. If I'm not mistaken, too, I didn't really follow the case at all. Like I said, I didn't come into the true crime community at all until very, very recently have I started hanging out in different chats and again getting to know some of the creators in the true crime sector here. And from what I have seen, I think many of the creators that I've watched have been following this case and the Summer Wells case since they started, and a lot of them have a lot of personal feelings and a lot of involvement in that case. Now, I know for sure that allegedly, no, for sure, allegedly, that I think Bullhorn Betty was involved in this case too. So to look that up in a different light, because I don't really agree with the direction that that's all going right now. That's neither here nor there, but I think she was involved in this case for a time. Maybe protested outside of the mom's house or got involved, maybe even Dolly Vision. I'm not sure.
All the stories we do are difficult. When it's little children like that, it takes it to the next level. Did you see his little brown? I mean, you look at that child. Why would anyone do anything other than hug him? I don't understand that, but we've got to try to figure this all out. Got to figure this all out. And investigations often start, and really do start most of the times, with the 911 call. That's the first time that law enforcement is then intervening in whatever is happening. And that's what happened here. There was a 911 call made, and it's Leilani Simon and her boyfriend Daniel who have the phone and are making the call in the morning. It's about 9:40. Take a listen.
Shout 911, what is your emergency? Yeah, I need to... we believe it's coming from kidnapping. Yeah. Did you say someone's been kidnapped? Yeah, we... You have a 1-year-old son? Yes! When was the last time you seen him? I saw him this morning when I left at 6. Okay, have you guys gone outside to check the area? Yes. How old is he? And he can't open the door. So you think someone broke in? Has there been any signs of breaking in? No. No breaking in, the door was open. Was it unlocked? Yeah, but the front door had bolts though, but yeah, it was. No, I can't find him nowhere. I was everywhere, and he's so scared, he's shouting everywhere. Okay, give me a description on him.
I do believe that I read somewhere, and might be over here in the side chat as well, I believe that a couple of months back she tried to have this 911 call suppressed from the jury, from the trial. And I don't know if she succeeded in that or not. Actually, I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Anybody that's watched the trial would know if they've already played the 911 call. I'll have to catch up on that. Look, it says it right there. Look, it's right here too. She wants to suppress the 911 call and interviews about missing son. Why would she think she would even be entitled to that? I don't know, but
Give me a description. He's got losing eyes, and skin, dark hair. He's what now? He's got tan skin, dark brown hair. His eyes are like a brown green hazel. Okay. And he's black, white, and Hispanic. He's Hawaiian. He's what now? Hawaiian. Hawaiian? Yes.
It's you listen to the call and you're wondering. I mean, because it has happened. We've covered that story where someone breaks into a home in the middle of the night and takes a young child. It can happen. It has happened. But you look at a case like this and a story and an investigation, and a child goes missing from a house. I mean, there's an obvious first question for all of this, and it's our first question of our investigation tonight, which is, who was at the house that day? Who was there? It's an important question. Who are the people that are in the house where Quentin was staying? Let me bring in my guests who are going to help us through all this. Joining me, forensic death investigator, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, and host of the very popular Body Bags podcast, Joseph Scott Morgan, and podcast host and Pop Crime TV reporter, Lauren Conlon with us. Thank you both for being here. Great to see you. I wanted to put up a quick little timeline here because this is a story where a little bit of information has come out. Not a ton, but some information has come out. This is significant. 5:29 a.m., Quentin's babysitter receives a text message saying no services would be needed for Quentin that day. That's 5:29 a.m. 6 a.m., baby Quentin is reportedly last seen in his playpen at the home. 9:39, Leilani and her boyfriend Daniel call 911 to report Quentin missing. Then we get to 1 o'clock and the FBI immediately jumping in to help with this search down in Savannah, Georgia. So Lauren, as we look at who's at the house that night, so Leilani's obviously there. It seems her boyfriend Daniel is there. Who else is in this home?
Well, Vinny, I first want to clarify that this home belongs to Leilani's mother, Billie Jo Howell, and her husband, Thomas Howell. And Leilani and Daniel and the 3 kids have a room downstairs while the upstairs is occupied by Billie Jo and Thomas, and also Leilani's older brother, Paul Simon. And yes, that's his real name, Paul Simon. But
that is seriously the 3rd or 4th time that I have heard somebody go, yes, his real name is Paul Simon.
But Billie Jo and Thomas were not there at the time. As far as we know, it was just Leilani, Thomas, and the 3 kids.
Joseph Scott Morgan, looking at that timeline, the first thing that jumps out to me, 5:29, canceling the babysitter. Mm-hmm. You don't need to come over. And this is someone from the neighborhood who has spoken about the case, but is, likely going to be an important witness in all this. And then at 6 o'clock, it seems that the boyfriend says, yeah, I saw Quentin at 6 a.m. when I was leaving for work. I'm looking at those 2 things. I wonder, well, why don't you need the babysitter?
Yeah, one of the things that we look for in investigations, then, is particularly when you're talking about, because, initially this is a missing child case, all right? So you begin to think about that, and one of the questions you're going to ask, is there anything that indicates that behaviors have deviated from the norm? So when you would question a parent about something like this, something so horrible, one of the first questions out of the gate is, do you ever cancel the babysitter? And if so, how frequently have you done this? And is this the normal time of day that you would do this? Remember, this is done from texting. So if there's a history of this, you can go back and look at the text if this is their normal piece, if this is the way they do it. And right you are, Ben, when you talk about this point of contact, they're going to be essential in establishing the timeline and also prior behaviors.
Yeah, Lauren, this to me, the canceling of the babysitter at 5:29, to me is a little odd. It's a lot odd. Like if you don't.
I mean, it's not odd if she knew that she didn't, if the child was no longer, you know, around, it wouldn't be that odd, would it? She obviously knew it, that she had done something or was planning to do something.
You don't need a babysitter. You should know the night before. Would you wake up at 5 o'clock and say, oh, we don't need a babysitter today? That defies logic, I think, to anyone.
Okay. I mean, I understand where he's coming from, where he says it defies logic. You would think that you would know the night before you didn't need a babysitter. But it's kind of like calling into work. If you went to bed last night and you were fine, but this morning you woke up with a bellyache, or you woke up with just not feeling well, or you starting to get the flu, you would call into work, or you would call your babysitter and say, no, I don't need you to watch the kids. I'm not going to work today. So, I mean, it's not beyond the scope of imagination to think that there were reasons that somebody could not have wanted to call a babysitter, or could have called the babysitter off at last minute. That's not beyond the scope of imagination.
Yes, I agree with you. It's incredibly odd. As a mother, I'm not waking up at 5:30 a.m. and texting my babysitter. And I think that this babysitter really cared about Quentin. There are reports that this babysitter was actually the one that got Leilani to call 911 in the first place, or got Danielle to call. So it's interesting. I mean, this was just the start of Leilani's lies, but I know that you're going to get to that, so I won't give anything away. But yeah, it's the start.
Yeah, we've got a lot to get to. Well, let's listen to Billy Joe, who's Leilani Simon's mother, Quentin's grandma, and as Lauren said, the owner of the home.
Did she have her own rooms within that residence that were?
Yes, sir.
Who did she reside here with?
Danny Youngkin, my husband Thomas Howell, and my son Paul Simon, and the grandchildren.
3 minor children.
All right, Joseph, so we're laying out who's in the house. So you're investigating this, and everyone who has access to the house or lives in the house obviously needs to be interviewed, and their story has to be verified, because that's the first place you have to look when a child is missing.
Yeah, you're right. But, one of the initial statements that came out relative to this person is that they stated that the child had been taken or snatched. To think about that, just let that seep into the groundwater there and think about that a little bit. Why is it that your mind flies to that issue immediately? And if that's the case, and if you can come up with that supposition, the question is, who in the hell is coming and going out of that house on a daily basis, on an hourly basis? And why is that house unsecured? Those are the big questions that you're going to be asking, because first off, who knows who the occupants are in that house? If they have an awareness that this little child, this precious little baby is in that house, who would have that information, that would know that that child is there, and that would be so motivated to snatch that child away from that family and run off with them? That's a big question here.
And the other thing, Lauren, that we heard in the 911 call was the door is open. But then the boyfriend says, yeah, but it's got bolts, but it's open. And very clear to say, well, Quentin can't open the door. But the door is open. You live in an area like this and there's woods in a neighborhood. It seems you should be spending some time outside searching for the child, like frantically searching for the child.
I agree with you. And I thought that was a little odd that while Danny is making the phone call, she's just kind of in the background adding context, because that's also not something that you would normally do on a 911 call. Start saying, well, it could be this. Well, it could be that. You're going to want to say, what should I do? Should I go search? Like everybody, come quick. My son is missing. You don't really get that. You hear more excuses.
Absolutely. All right, Lauren, Justice Scott Morgan staying with us. Coming up next, what will investigators be able to determine from Quentin's remains?
Conducted, and we have every reason to believe that this will confirm the remains are Quentin's.
I'm seriously gonna have to start looking into the trial itself. I did think I heard a little excerpt today that the house was complicated and that it would have been very difficult for somebody to just walk in that house and know exactly where to go to find Quentin.
This afternoon, Chatham County Police Department detectives arrested 22-year-old Leilani Simon and charged her with malice murder, concealing the death of another person, false reporting and making false statements in connection with the disappearance and death of her son, 20-month-old Quentin Simon. Leilani Simon is being held at the Chatham County Detention Center and is awaiting a bond hearing. We do not anticipate any other arrests in this case. She has been the sole suspect from the beginning. On Friday, our search teams at the Waste Management landfill found what they believed were human remains. This afternoon, the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia confirmed that they are, in fact, human remains. Additional testing, including a DNA analysis, is being conducted, and we have every reason to believe that this will confirm the remains are Quentin's.
He was thrown out like garbage. This little boy that you're looking at was killed and thrown out like garbage.
It's pathetic, and that's disgusting in every way. In no world, in no realm would that ever be okay. It's sick.
They had to go to a landfill to recover his remains. Unreal. Which brings me to my next question, which is about what happened to the little guy. What will investigators be able to determine from Quentin's remains? It's so sad. It is so sad. But the investigation must continue. You got to figure this stuff out. Still with us, Joseph Scott Morgan and Lauren Conley. Lauren, the one thing about this search that I think people have to realize, and this was like a massive search that was done, an incredible effort by everyone involved.
Yes, Vinny, it was a huge search. Tons of money was put into this, over $250,000 by the county. The FBI was involved. You know, they had local police, a K-9 team, helicopters. Everybody in the area was searching for Quentin Simon.
Joseph Scott Morgan, I want to read something from the state's filing just to give a little perspective on what happened to Quentin, and then you can help us answer the question about what investigators are going to be able to figure out from this part of the evidence. But hours after the defendant had discarded Quentin's body in the dumpster, the hydraulic forks of a front-loading garbage truck lifted up the dumpster and dumped its contents, including Quentin, into the large box that constitutes the back of the truck. Then a powerful compactor built into the truck compacted the contents of the box. Eventually, the truck gorged its load at the trash basin of a local landfill. A bulldozer then shoved the heaped garbage 300 feet from the trash basin to a cell. Once at the cell, the garbage and Quentin were compacted by a roughly 50-ton machine that looks something like a steamroller, but with rollers that are studded rather than smooth. Then there was the search. The process consisted of excavators scooping garbage out of the cell and loading it into dump trucks. The dump trucks unloading the garbage at an open area known as a search deck. The garbage then being spread out into an even layer on the search deck. Law enforcement combing through the garbage, then clearing it to make room for the next load. This is repeated day after day, load after load, ton after ton. Quentin's body, is what they're saying here, went through a lot. But they did it, Joseph Scott Morgan. They found...
Let that sink in a little bit. Just listening to it right now, that would send me into a spiral as a parent, knowing that somebody had done that to one of my children. I would just spiral. This bitch threw away her child like a piece of trash. And his poor little body had to go through all of that just to... why? Because... why?
Whatever was left of these remains, what are they going to be able to determine from these remains?
Well, I got to tell you, Ben, tip of the cap, first off, to law enforcement and these people that were boots on the ground. You realize how unsuccessful most of these searches generally are. I know you realize that. We've covered it for years, and I've been a part of searches like this, and it is an absolute nightmare to work in this environment. And, they talked about the truck or the piece of equipment that compounds everything that's contained in there. These landfills are split up into, they call it cells. You can call it grids as well, because you can't dump in the same area all the time. You have to keep it evenly spaced. And the upside is where that particular dumpster originated from that day. So it would be isolated in that specific topographic area for that site. One of the things you have working against you is nature. Remember, a landfill is there to break down all organic material. And I'm not being disrespectful here, but the human body is chief among these. And so decomposition is promoted. One interesting piece to this, Finn, is that they talk specifically about finding skeletal remains, which means that within weeks, his little precious body would have broken down very quickly, probably a lot quicker than, say, for instance, if this was a body that was placed out in the woods somewhere. You get it into this environment and it's greatly compromised. So if you're looking for, say, injuries to the tissue, like a bruise or even a gunshot wound or a knife wound, you're not going to find it most of the time because all of the soft tissue will be gone. So then you're reliant upon the skeletal remains, which they removed to Quantico. And that's kind of an interesting bit there. For me, it was, at least. They first went to Quantico, and then they came back to the state of Georgia to the state medical examiner's office. They quickly, early on, determined that these were a child's skeletal remains, which are completely different than an adult. They're not matured. And so they're very easily compromised. The bones are very soft. So that's why this is, I'm not trying to be grotesque. I'm just saying this is a miracle that they even found him.
It's sad that he thinks that it's being grotesque that they actually found this child. I mean, this is the actual effects of true crime. Like, this is what true crime creators should be out here looking into. It's a dirty, dirty sector. It's not for the lighthearted. It's not nice. It's nasty. And it's sad. And people are brutalizing their children and doing things that they shouldn't to each other. I mean, it's definitely got to be talked about. Thank goodness for Court TV.
Him. And so that's why this is such an achievement on the part of law enforcement, and they couldn't deserve more credit.
And as you get those remains and you examine them, what are you looking for? What can you get from the skeletal remains of this small young child?
Yeah, one of the key things is they're being very cagey about this. Did you notice in the report it was very nonspecific relative to, well, the weapon or the instrument that was used? They talked about, and I'm going to get the phrase, maybe you can correct me here, but it was an instrument that was used, and it was nonspecific. Well, an instrument, or an object rather, can be any number of things. It can be a hammer, a baseball bat, it can be a knife. Those are all objects or instruments. Generally when you hear object, though, that implies blunt force trauma. So I have to.
That was one of the questions that I had, because I don't know what it was that she did to him. And I'm sure throughout the trial, I'm going to learn those things. This case is going to infuriate me. I can already feel it. I already feel it.
I have to ask myself this. If you're making that determination, and again, we don't have this in its final context, do you have some bit of the skull that remained where you could appreciate maybe some kind of fracture or something that had occurred? Because if you're talking about a knife wound, much more difficult to assess that on skeletal remains.
Joseph Scott Morgan, thank you so much. Really appreciate your insight, and you do it so well and so delicately. Lauren Conlon, thank you as well. I'm Vinny Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. Vinny Politan, we continue our investigation of the tragic death of little Quentin Simon. He was 20 months old, which is really the age when our children start to become little people. But for Quentin, his chance to live and grow was taken. Here's his story.
This is 20-month-old Quentin Simon, an absolute angel, with his warm brown eyes and shiny hair, learning something new every day and growing into his little personality. It's hard to believe that anyone could or would bring harm to Quentin, but someone did. He was reported missing on October 5th, 2022. He had been living in Savannah, Georgia with his grandparents, his mom, and her boyfriend. His remains were found in a landfill after an extensive search. Prosecutors say it was the actions of Leilani Simon, his mother, that led them to that search. She's now been charged with his murder, but there are still plenty of questions in this case that prosecutors believe they can answer as they seek justice for little Quentin Simon.
It's a tragedy beyond tragedies. You know, children are so dependent on the adults in their world and the adults in their lives. And they trust their parents. They trust the adults. And when that trust is broken, to me, it's beyond heartbreaking, because what stands between a child and harm are the ones who are there to protect them, to hug them. And obviously that didn't happen in this case. You go to the indictment, and we haven't learned a ton of specifics about this case because of the way it has sort of proceeded through our system of justice, and some information has come out. For instance, take a look here at count 1 from the indictment. Malice murder. This is Georgia. Leilani Marie Simon, on or about the 5th day of October, 2022, did unlawfully, with malice aforethought, cause the death of her son, Quentin Simon, a human being, in a manner unknown to the grand jury at this time. Unknown. Like I said, putting together the pieces of this story and trying to figure out exactly what happened has not been easy for investigators. They need to tell a story, though. When you go to trial, you need to tell a story to the jury. If you're trying to prove someone did something, you got to tell them what you believe they did. Which brings me to my next question. What do prosecutors say happened to Quentin? That's the opening statement. I mean, you've got to tell the jury, hey, this is what happened to this child. This is why we are here. Joining me to help us work through all of this, private investigator Jason Jensen and podcast host and Pop Crime TV reporter Lauren Conlon. I wanted to put one other count from the indictment up because I think this gives us, again, another piece of information from Quentin's story. And this is count 2 from the indictment. Felony murder. Did commit the offense of aggravated assault, a felony, in that the accused, Leilani Simon, the mother, did make an assault upon the person of her son, Quentin Simon, with an object.
Okay, so that tells you a little bit. It tells you a little bit. We obviously don't know first with the malice murder and then felony murder. We don't know why. We don't know how. We don't know the where. I mean, we know where they found him. We don't know how he got there. All of that stuff at this time. And all of that's going to come out through trial, obviously.
Object that, when used offensively against a person, did result in serious bodily injury. The nature of the object being unknown to the grand jury at this time. Jason Jensen, things being unknown to the grand jury, to me, problematic. We don't know the manner in which Quentin's life was taken. They say there's an object used. We don't know what the object used here is. There seems to be a few holes right now in this case, unless they just don't want to reveal them, but they didn't reveal it to the grand jury.
You're right, Benny, and that's the biggest challenge that we have here. I mean, definitely by saying that it's unknown, they don't know how it happened or maybe even why it happened. But what we do know is that from our experience in the legal system, that when a parent combines, illegal controlled substance usage, it often leads to child neglect or abuse. So,
okay, so that's the first that I'm hearing about the drugs. I'm gonna choke on these Skittles.
We have that as a guide for them to follow, and then when they're investigating the disappearance, and we get all these conflicting stories that don't align with the facts, then you know that that's the key suspect to be worried over. And certainly the circumstances of losing custody a week before kind of adds into this. So clearly we know who did it. We just don't know how or why.
Lauren, here's a big question. I think that is a cloud over this case. They've been saying she was the lone suspect from the start. I get it, but she's not home alone. Her boyfriend is there. Her boyfriend is there. How does he not have the information or not be charged? That's the part that is very confusing to me.
I understand, Vinny. It's confusing. However, I believe that from the start, police knew right away what they were dealing with. Leilani told lie after lie after lie. She was under the influence of a controlled substance. She lied about that. She lied about her whereabouts that night. She lied about her whereabouts the next morning. So right away, they knew what was going on. They just had to prove it. And between analyzing her cell phone records and going through the house and searching, I believe all of that combined. Oh, along with the fact, Vinny, that she was seen with her mother the first day that the landfill was searched. She was seen with her mother taking shots at a bar. She just appeared to be...
I'm sorry, what? You were fucking doing what? Out taking shots at the bar? Piece of shit.
living her life, lying, not exactly caring. So they just had to get their evidence together and make an arrest here. But you're right, confusing, but they knew.
Let me, Jason, count 3 of the indictment for felony murder. The accused did maliciously cause her son, Quentin Simon, cruel and excessive physical pain. It seems to make an allegation like that, you have to have some idea of what happened here.
Right, yeah, they're definitely going through the list of possibilities, going from felony murder, aggravated murder, and really trying to cover all their bases, and they're going to let the facts play out and the jury decide.
Now, we did get something from one state filing in this case, which to me tells us how they ended up at the landfill. The state provided the following information regarding the locations and times of the offensive charged in counts 1 through 4. At the residence located at the house from approximately 11:10 p.m. on October 4th, 2022 to approximately 1:10 a.m. on October 5th, 2022. So she's home from 11:10 to 1:10. Then inside a Dodge Journey bearing a Georgia tag number en route from the house to the dumpsters at the Azalea Mobile Home Plaza between 1:10 a.m. and approximately 1:19 a.m. A 9-minute drive from the home to this mobile home plaza, the dumpsters there. And then at the dumpsters at the Azalea Mobile Home Plaza between approximately 1:19 a.m. to 1:22 a.m. on October 5th, 2022. Jason Jensen, you put together the pieces of a circumstantial case. You look at some of the circumstances here. She's out the night before, 1:10, driving to the dumpsters at a mobile home community.
Right, and her excuse was she claimed that she went to a friend's house to get Oragel, and then when obviously, the investigators are going to vet out that information.
Oh my gosh. This poor little baby was teething. And probably crying and irritated. And being on substances, it probably elevated her anxiety, and it's ridiculous. Makes me want to cry. Poor baby.
When it doesn't jive, then they know that there's something more sinister that deals with the dumpster. So that's why they, their investigation led to the landfill.
They've got her at the dumpsters. They follow where that dumpster ended up, and they found little Quentin's remains. Lauren, the other thing about this is this now gives me a timeline, right, of when they believe he's dead. The night before, I remember the boyfriend on the phone with 911 saying he saw Quentin at 6 a.m. Those two things don't equal. That doesn't work.
You're right. And I want to point out that Leilani did admit to going to the dumpster. She said she was just disposing your normal garbage right at 1 in the morning. But you're absolutely right, Vinny. Danny said that he saw Quentin. So we're left wondering, did he see him? Is he lying?
Your normal 1 a.m. freaking garbage.
I mean, I have a feeling that these two, and this is my speculation based on Leilani, they do some drugs. Maybe he doesn't have a good sense of time. We don't know yet.
Jason, he seems to be the most important witness for this case if he's going to testify. He hasn't been charged with anything, right? So he can come into the courtroom and kind of talk about this, but he's got to explain how he can see Quentin at 6 a.m. that morning after the babysitter was called at 5:30 and canceled, but sees him on the way out to work, yet prosecutors are going to say that child was disposed of the night before.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Danny has a immunity situation going on where he's providing state's witness testimony against Leilani because...
I mean, did he say he saw the baby? Or did he say he peeked in and it looked like covering up the baby and he didn't look past that? Not, making any excuses whatsoever, but factually, it could be that he didn't even, especially if he was on substances, he didn't look in there and see the baby in the pack and play. He saw, the mound of covers that look like your child is laying there. I could see that as a, possible scenario.
That's their best evidence to get a conviction. So I wouldn't be surprised if he knew more and could have been charged, but in order to help build a case against the actual actor that caused the death, they needed him to testify.
Yeah, and if he's the other person there, Lauren, my guess is when we get to trial, there's going to be some finger pointing. And Leilani, where's the natural place for her to point the finger? Right at her boyfriend, who said he saw Quentin that morning.
Yes, I'm ready for this trial. I mean, I feel like Danny, I agree with Jason with what he said, but I don't necessarily think Danny was involved in the killing, but it's completely possible that Danny was helping Leilani not get in trouble for her actions.
That makes sense. It doesn't make sense to do it, but your analysis makes sense of what happened here. All right, guests are staying with us. Still to come, and this is another question because there's some history here. Why didn't Leilani have custody?
How can you even...
There's so many facets to this case that, like I said, I was not involved in any of this happening before. And it's so many facets and so many layers to this case. But I think it's an open, shut deal, but this is a baby. This is a baby.
Detail as you can. What happened?
A scary looking dude.
As a mother,
look at him.
If my child went missing, I would be out here. I would be wanting everybody in the world to help me. Everybody and anybody. And the fact that she's out here just living her best life, partying at Taffy, and your child is, God knows who, laying where? In the cold?
What happened to this 20-month-old child is unthinkable. No child should be harmed by anyone, let alone the person in their lives that should be their protector.
These are the types of cases that get people very worked up. People in the community, people in the true crime community got very worked up about this one. They still are, obviously, but now it's been a couple of years. Showing up, protesting at the house, and it's all...
It's been a couple years, but I do know that I have seen a couple of the creators. Like I said, I'm new to the area, and I've seen a couple of creators that have still talked about this case and that have still talked about, wanting to watch through the trial. I know for certain that there are a couple of true crime creators, or at least even the people that are in the true crime sector that are actually streaming the trial as they go because they were personally invested in it. So, and it's definitely one of the things that it definitely works me up. This is ridiculous.
All because a little child, this little child, 20 months, is missing at that point, and mom does not seem that concerned, is not out searching, is like having a pretty good time. And it's very frustrating and it's heartbreaking. And then you dive a little deeper into the family dynamics and what exactly is going on here. Because this was a young mother, obviously, right? A young mother who didn't seem like she was ready for motherhood, but had children. Take a look at this. This is from the Georgia Child Support Worksheet. This is concerning Quentin. Child, Quentin Simon. Non-custodial parent, Leilani Simon. Non-parent custodian, Billy Howell. That's grandma. So in this case where a child goes missing and a child ends up in a landfill, this was a child who was on the radar as being potentially in danger. So much so that Quentin's mom did not have custody of her own child, yet that night she seemed to have custody of her child.
I'm sure her mom feels guilty enough as it is.
Grandma's the actual parent here, is the custodial non-parent. So that brings us to our next question, which is an important one in understanding what exactly is going on in this little boy's life. Why didn't Leilani have custody of her child?
You don't lose custody of your child that easily. There have to be issues. Still with me, Jason Jensen and Lauren Conlon. So let's talk about some of those issues and why she wouldn't have custody. Lauren, this is someone, I guess, troubled, a troubled young mother.
Yes, Leilani was actually on probation when Quentin passed away. She had quite a few charges under her belt, with the most recent charge being theft. She was caught burglarizing a store in North Carolina, and then she was caught stealing from somebody else's trailer. And I also want to point out, Vinny, that Billie Joe, her mother, I'm still trying to figure out how she had custody, because her rap sheet is longer than J-Lo's husband list. Billie Joel had grand larceny, battery, prostitution, possession, fraud. I mean, these...
Holy crap. Like I said, talk about layers. That's great. How are these people allowed to produce children? Who let y'all have sex?
Kids, you have to just feel so bad, because my gosh, what did you all think was going to happen?
And Jason Jensen, so now you look at it and you say, Quentin's on the radar, right? They know that there's problems at home. They try to keep a child as close to home as possible when they can, if there's a relative who can jump in. And I guess the relative here was grandma, but as Lauren pointed out, grandma has her own history in all of this. So this was a child who seemingly didn't really have much of a chance.
Right, yeah. Typically, when this situation arises, it's because the parent, the natural parent, has issues with the law, oftentimes drug-related issues, and the types of offenses that she had recently been convicted of, the theft and the burglary and things, those are usually categorized as drug-related offenses, because that's how they get the funds. They steal things or, trade them for drugs to, satisfy their addiction. So clearly that was the situation. The children, Quentin was removed from Leilani because of the drugs and placed in grandma's care, Billie Joe, but they were living together. So even though she wasn't supposed to have custody, it was still de facto custody because they're in the same home.
And that's where we get to the day or the night that Quentin dies, Lauren. And it seems that even though she's the non-custodial parent, she was the parent with custody at the time that Quentin died. Like, she is there.
Every single time, every single solitary time I see that line coming out of people dressed to go look in this landfill for this baby, it just does something. It just does something to me. Every single time. It seems a little like surreal. I don't know. It just seems. And then you just see his little face. Just want to hold him. So cute.
I don't know where grandma was.
Right. Grandma and her husband were not there. And this is the reason why the other two children were taken from grandma and moved to foster care after this happened, because she did not do her job. She left those babies with a mother who was not supposed to be a mother. She was never supposed to have custody of those kids at that time. And that right there is unfortunately on Billie Joe.
And it brings us like full circle, Jason, to the babysitter, who also will play a large role in all this, because this babysitter basically played a large role in the child's life. I think that was the best care that Quentin got, is when the babysitter got to take care of him.
Yeah, obviously state licensed, responsible adult that is watching more than Quentin as a profession. So certainly qualified and, trusted by other family members of different children to watch their kids. So the time that Quentin was in the best care was while, everybody's relieving their responsibilities to this babysitter.
Yeah, and as we wrap things up here, Lauren, when you look at these pictures of this child, I mean, what do you see?
Vinny, I can't even begin to explain how my heart is just broken. I can't even look at these pictures without wanting to cry. This entire show, you guys have been showing these adorable pictures of this toddler, so innocent, so precious, and the one person that he looked to, his mother, did this to him. I unfortunately think about the fear he must have felt, the confusion, the pain, and my heart breaks.
We're out of time. Thank you both so much. Lauren Conlon, Jason Jensen. We'll see you again. Unfortunately, this is not the first story of a young mother accused in the death of their child. We've seen it before. Sometimes it comes.
Well, the trial is ongoing, so that's the biggest thing, is that they've figured out who she is and what she's got going on. See, they have some opening statements. I don't know if I want to get started in that tonight. I may delve into that. Let's see what else is happening. The media front today marks the release of Sweet Bobby on Netflix, a documentary exploring a shocking catfishing case. Other upcoming true crime documentaries include Women of the Hour, covering the eerie tale of a woman who unknowingly chose serial killer Rodney Alcala as her date on the dating game. Oh, that's creepy sounding. I'll have to look into that. Cold case in Houston. A man was sentenced for the 2009 cold case of a mother of 5. Why do I keep getting defeated in these dungeons? Oh, you can't even see that right now. Let's look this up. I'm sharing this one and share this other page here. Man who posed as utility worker tied the woman up, captured in Louisiana. Wow. So a man accused of posing as a utility worker in order to enter a home in a wealthy Michigan neighborhood, killing the 72-year-old owner, and tying up the victim's wife was captured in Louisiana several days later. According to the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office in Michigan, on Thursday, October the 10th, at 10 p.m., Carlos Jose Hernandez and another male reportedly went to a home in Rochester Hills dressed as energy company workers and said that they were there to investigate a gas leak. The heck? Hold on, let me get this set up. Okay. The homeowners communicated with the two men via the Ring doorbell and did not let them inside. The Oakland County Sheriff's Office shared Ring footage of the two men standing at the door. How creepy would have that been? Oh. The two men returned the next morning and had the male victim sign a paper made to look like it was from the utility company. So once Hernandez and the other men went inside, they allegedly took the male victim to the basement. Soon after that, they came back upstairs, asked the 72-year-old woman where she kept her money and jewelry, then duct taped her wrists and feet. When the female victim started to scream, Hernandez allegedly hit her in the face. Hernandez and the other male reportedly took the woman's watch and phone, then fled in a white pickup truck. She managed to escape and call the police. She discovered her husband, identified as Hussein Murray, in the basement with his wrists and feet bound. The Oakland County Sheriff's Office said in a statement, because of the gruesome nature of the injuries, it was not immediately clear if he had been shot or bludgeoned to death. Oh my gosh. Murray's wife was taken to the hospital and later released. On the afternoon of October the 12th, the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office received information that Hernandez was traveling south from Arkansas. Deputies located his vehicle on the highway and conducted a traffic stop. He was arrested for outstanding warrants out of Ohio for armed robbery, as well as murder and 2 counts of unlawful imprisonment in Michigan. That's insane. Insane. Alright, I'll be right back. I hear a bird. Bird.
Well, fine. Feel like this.
What?
Oh, I was gonna shoot it and fucking send that to get all involved. Playing fucking hero.
Fucking bullet sponges, I swear.
Bird right above you.
Who's attacking me?
Bird.
Oh, okay.
Coming over.
I hear a cop. Hey, get out of there. Let me get up here and I'll get you back while you do that.
48 hours.
There's another one.
There's somebody out there with a backpack on.
We're not getting synced kills with Shadow because he's not on our thing.
Damn it, Shadow, join us.
Alright, I'm back. Okay, let's see. Most of us remember who Jodi Arias was. She's the girl who stabbed her boyfriend in the shower. Apparently, according to Nancy Grace, she's been selling her artwork for thousands. This was 9 hours ago. Let's watch this.
Incredible. I thought I had misread when I learned convicted killer Jodi Arias. Remember her? Jodi Arias stabbed her boyfriend, Travis Alexander. There's an argument about how many times she stabbed him dead because there were so many stab wounds, close to 30, that they were overlapping each other. You couldn't tell if it was one stab or two or three. And then capped it off by shooting him in the head, leaving him to decompose in a shower stall. Why? Because he dared to ask another woman on a date. After a marathon sex session with Arias, she just couldn't take it. Jodi Arias is selling her artwork for thousands. One of her pieces of art is going for, let me check this, maybe I need glasses, for $2,500, nearly $3,000. Hey, you know she's just getting a magazine and tracing over it, right?
Who does the money go to? Did she have fees at the end of her, court hearing, and this money's going to that, going to the victims? I mean, if it's going to the victims, then I'm all for it, to be honest with you. But if it's sitting on her kiosk for her canteen, hell no.
That said, have you ever heard of blood money? Good evening, I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us.
Nancy's so dramatic.
Between aspiring photographer Jodi Arias and salesman Travis Alexander turns sour. The explosive pair is on and off again, but this time Travis swears they're done for good.
And there's a reason he swore to his friends he was done with her for good. When we say a stalker, we normally picture a husband or boyfriend, an ex, looking in your window, calling you nonstop, following you around, putting a GPS tracker on your vehicle. You don't normally think of a woman, Jodi Arias, like Jodi Arias, as being a stalker. But oh boy, she was a stalker and then some. You don't believe me? Listen.
What's going on? A friend of ours is dead in his bedroom. We hadn't heard from him for a while. We think he's dead. His roommate just went in there and said there's lots of blood. I didn't go in, but I can give you the phone to someone who went in there. Yes, please, can you?
Hello.
Hi, so what's going on?
He's dead. He's in his bedroom in the shower.
Okay, how did this happen? Do you have any idea?
No, we have no idea. Everyone's been wondering about him for a few days.
She said that there's blood. So is it coming from his head? Did he?
It's all over the place.
With me, renowned expert Joseph Scott Morgan, death investigator who has conducted thousands of death investigations.
Did we just see him on Vinny's show on Court TV? Interesting.
Be they natural causes, accident, suicide, or homicide. Author of Blood Beneath My Feet on Amazon, and star of a hit new series podcast, Body Bags, with Joseph Scott Morgan. Joe Scott, you and I went round and round and round about how many times Travis Alexander was murdered. And we're about to do it again. It's a rematch. But one thing you said...
Well, he was only murdered once.
The murder that stuck with me, and I'll never forget it. You described some drops. I don't mean... throwback, I don't mean a transfer, drops of blood on Travis Alexander's sink. And the way you described it, he had so many wounds, but these were drops, like round circular drops. And you described how he would have looked into his bathroom mirror and seen himself dying.
Hit the nail on the head, Nancy, and I remember this after all these years, thinking back to this. Those droplets that you're referring to are, in fact, some are droplets. But Nancy, here's the really ghastly thing about this. Many of these are projected droplets, and it's what's referred to as bloody aspirate. And I'm going to break that down for you just so people can understand what this man went through. After he was initially attacked in the shower, he is aware of this. He leans over the sink. You can see the contact points where his hands were on the sink. He's leaning forward, looking at himself in the mirror. And Nancy, he aspirated blood down into his airway and spit it back out. So he's aspirating, blowing it out, and you get these fine little dots of blood that were all over the place at this point in time. And it's a horrible event to imagine. This guy's just taking a shower. Can you imagine? Suddenly you're getting stabbed in the back by this demon. And then...
Oh, what a detailed... This guy, so far, between this interview and the last interview, I like his, attention to detail, or his ability to convey.
Scott, hold on. I'm showing a crime scene photo that we obtained describing what you're talking about, the sink. And, he was found decomposing in the shower. But I'm looking at the sink, and I will never forget this photo. And if you look to the left of the faucet, toward the front of the sink, you see two of the dropped drops you were describing, and then if you go right, you see another drop. Now, it's amazing to me that you, as a death scene investigator, could distinguish the difference between those drops and all the other blood. But now that you told me about it, I see it. It's like looking up at the stars, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can't see the constellations. Right. Looking at this blood tells a story, and you can even determine which blood was aspiration. In other words, he was bleeding when he breathed out of his mouth or nose. You would get a fine spray, especially from the nose, of blood.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right with this, Nancy. And he would be bearing witness to this. This is one of the issues with me after we've covered this for so many years. He's actually eyeballing himself in the mirror. He has not lost his sight, his ability to see, if you can imagine. He's slowly bleeding out. He has an awareness. He's getting lightheaded, but he's also regurgitating blood and blowing it out at the same time. You've got passive droplets, which, like a bloody nose, kind of drop downward. And then you have these projected droplets that are very fine.
Hold on. Joe Scott. Circle me back, please, control room, to the shower if you can. Yes. Now, it's just, I compare it to the scene of an arson where accelerant is used. You can tell where the fire started because you'll see accelerant, or you'll see the major portion of the burning, the most destruction in that spot where the fire started. Right. And here in the shower, that's where we see an abundance of blood. So would you agree that's where it started, or what do you think?
Well, what you're seeing here is passive blood flow, and a lot of this is decomposing as well. But draw your attention to the right aspect, to the shower wall there. When he was placed into that shower, that's actually probably where his shoulder was resting, that kind of swipe that you have right there. And then the settling of the dark blood headed down the drain, that's a combination of the seepage of the blood and also a combination of decompositional fluid. She left this guy to literally decompose in his own bathroom, Nancy.
There are very few people that can follow an explanation by Joe Scott Morgan. But before I go to Andy Kahn, I want you to hear what pops up immediately in the 911 call.
You're a good friend of Travis's, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has he been depressed at all? Thinking about committing suicide? Anything like that?
I don't think he's been thinking he committed suicide. He's been really depressed because he broke up with this girl, and he was all upset about that. But I don't think he would actually kill himself over that.
Has he been threatened by anyone recently?
Yes, he has.
Okay.
He has an ex-girlfriend that's been bothering him and following him and slashing tires and things like that.
And do you know the ex-girlfriend's name?
Her name is Jody.
And there you go. Right then, in the 911 call, Dr. Bethany Marshall, there you're hearing Dr. Bethany Marshall, renowned psychoanalyst, joining us out of LA at drbethanymarshall.com. She appears in the show Paris in Love on Peacock. She's everywhere. Her book, Deal Breaker, When to Work on a Relationship and When to Walk Away, specifically pertinent to today's material, today's case. I cannot believe this woman is selling artwork for nearly $3,000 per sketch. That's a whole nother can of worms. Can I talk to you about...
I just hope it's going to the victims.
Remember those photos of Jodi Arias? Warning everybody, just go ahead and buckle your seatbelt. The jury saw this, as did I. Jodi Arias all sprawled out. I can't remember if she had on underwear or was naked. But anyway, on his bed, they had, is that her? I had to turn upside down. Is that the day of the marathon sex session? There's some a lot more racy than that. Anyway, she has a marathon sex session with Travis Alexander, not judging, don't care. But it's only...
Whatever, Nancy sounds a little jealous a little bit.
So, you still taking that woman to Cancun on that trip? And he goes, yeah. These two were broken up. She had no right to demand he not date other people. They were broken up over her stalking, slashing his tires, showing up at his house, leaving Cinnabon on his car at 5 o'clock in the morning under the pretext of getting him breakfast. BS. She's trying to find out if anybody spent the night over at his place. He goes on and on and on, Bethany.
You know, Nancy, he's doing what abuse victims do. He's welcoming the abuser right back into the home because she convinces him that she's not going to hurt him. So all of this marathon sex, she probably has borderline sociopathic personality disorder, and women who are borderline use sex to hook the other person in, to have control over them. She probably had what we call merger fantasies in my field. It's somebody who's so disturbed, they want to merge into the love object. They want to be one with that person. Any separation between them and that person, even if that person picks up the phone or calls their mother or goes away with somebody else, feels like utter abandonment and a betrayal. And when they feel abandoned, they feel deflated. And when they feel deflated, they become enraged. Women with borderline personality disorder, they have this oceanic rage that leads to plotting and planning and plotting and planning. She was probably planning this for a long, long time. And I'm imagining that marathon sex session. She probably thought that they had a unique and special relationship, that he was going to come back to her. And then when he was honest, which I admire him for, and said, yeah, I'm going on this vacation, she just snapped. Her emotions outpaced her ability to think. And what's interesting about the sound you just played, the roommates knew that Jodi Arias was going to do this. Remember that party, Nancy, we all covered this, where they were all hanging out, I think at the apartment, and she either had her head in his lap or his legs across his lap. It's like she was marking her territory. He belonged to her and nobody else in her mind.
And it's always amazing to me that people can name the killer in the 911 call. It's like everybody knows. Of course, that's not evidence, can't come in as evidence. But when I have 10 people saying, she did it, I listen. Joining me right now is a very special guest, a longtime colleague that has become a friend. And as weird as it may sound, we bonded over toenails. Not his toenails.
Really, Nancy? Gross. Whatever you're about to say doesn't even matter.
It's not my toenails. But the toenails of Angel Ramirez, correct? Wasn't that his name? Correct. Or Angel Resendez Ramirez. What I know is he's a serial killer selling his toenails from behind bars, and people actually paid for it. When you told me that, I said, technical legal term, BS. And you went, I don't know. Come to my office. I followed you. And your office at that time was like a treasure trove. No, let me say a Pandora's box, okay, of evils, of all these people around the country that were selling murderabilia. And you coined that phrase. I stole it, but you made that up. And now Arias is doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you have this giant industry that's sprung up primarily from the internet, in which you have serial killers, mass murderers, school shooters, high-profile killers like Jodi Arias, who, like it or not, has a big name. She has a following, and they have found a way to continue to enable their narcissistic.
Wow. That's weird. That's weird. I wonder if I can find it. Oh my gosh, it's so freaking weird. That is weird. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're gonna look it up. We're gonna look it up. Let's look at this. Wow. Nothing to fear. She has her own website? A cow is not my usual subject matter, and I never imagined painting one yet. I love how old girl turned out. How do you have a TikTok, bro? Who will go down to the shady grove and summon the shadows there and tie a ribbon on the sheltering arms in the springtime of the year? Sunday morning. Oh my gosh. Wow. Looks like that's all for now. That's insane! That is insane! Insane.
Behavior. I mean, obviously, she has a giant ego, and she is simply selling her artwork. No one should be able to rob, rape, and murder, then turn around and make a buck off it. I don't care, if you're a firm believer in capitalism or whatever. This is where you got to draw the line, and the buck has to stop here. You cannot continue to allow a convicted murderer to essentially operate a business behind prison bars. I'm just absolutely shocked because most of the time in my research and dealings, most of the time prisons are not aware that a particular inmate is selling their goods through third parties. But the Arizona Department of Corrections is completely complicit because they're aware of it and they're just shrugging their shoulders saying there's nothing we can do. To quote you, Nancy,
Wow.
that's BS, because most prisons have policies in the prison that state you cannot operate a business unless you have their permission. I cannot believe that the Arizona Department of Corrections would give their permission to allow Jodi Arias to profit from killing Travis Alexander. That is absolutely absurd. I've not seen that in my 25 years of researching this industry.
His bedroom is where in the house?
It's upstairs, and if you go up the stairs, it's on the left. It's the first door on your left. It's the only door on your left.
Okay.
And it's just a big master suite bedroom up there. And she's talking to his friend right now. There's a girl that's been stalking him, and he's trying to. You might know some information. I hope my phone doesn't die. I'm on like 1 bar of battery.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to keep you on the phone until officers arrive. Either officers or paramedics arrive, okay?
Okay, I think I can hear the siren now.
Where is Travis Alexander? Friends have
That's crazy. That's just not okay in any sense of the word. I can't think of any way that would be okay.
What's up, y'all?
Let's see what else is new today. See the other trials of this week. The husband that was burned in Georgia by Melody Walker Ferris. Young Thug Rico trial still happening. Sean Diddy Combs. Sarah Boone jury selection.
Well, right now, jury selection.
Let's look at that. See what happened with that today. Might have been yesterday.
Well, right now, jury selection in the suitcase murder trial is underway. Fox 35's Stephanie Buffamonte has been there all day long in court. And Stephanie, both sides now finding it pretty hard to get enough jurors for this trial.
I imagine. Everybody's heard of this.
That is right. So 2 panels of 50 people each were brought in for jury selection today. Another 50 people will be brought in tomorrow morning, and they'll have other people on hand if need be. The tricky thing with the jury selection in this case is that this trial is expected to last 3 weeks. So a lot of people have conflicts with work, their kids, and other things like that. The other thing, this is a high-profile case, so a lot of people already know the details and may have seen evidence.
Ma'am, you told me last week that you were ready for trial. Are you ready for trial today?
I am.
Okay, all right.
Sarah Boone walked into the Orange County courtroom wearing a blue dress shirt, slacks, and jail slippers. After a week-long delay due to Hurricane Milton, jury selection for her trial began Monday. Boone sat before jurors without handcuffs. The Winter Park woman is accused of zipping her boyfriend, George Torres, up in a suitcase during a drunken game of hide-and-seek back in 2020. Boone told deputies back then she went upstairs to her room and fell asleep, and when she woke up, she found Torres dead in the suitcase. Investigators say evidence shows she filmed her then-boyfriend inside the suitcase while he was pleading to be let out.
Sarah, for everything you've done to me. I can't breathe, babe. Seriously. Yeah, that's when you do and you choke me.
It's evidence like this cell phone video that the state and defense would rather potential jurors to have not already seen.
Has anyone seen a video of a man in a suitcase?
There was a series of questions from Judge Michael Kranick to see if potential jurors had already seen the cell phone video, the interrogation video, and the body cam video from when deputies responded.
You zipped him in there? Yes. He thought it would be funny to be put in the suitcase, so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to joke with you, and I'll zip you up and make him, squirm a little bit, whatever it is. But then I fell asleep.
Has anyone seen any body-worn camera videos in which Miss Boone is speaking to police? Do you have such strong feelings that you could not be a fair and impartial juror? If you have those beliefs, please raise your paddles at this time.
This is me raising my paddle to punch her in the face. Because I could not be a fair and impartial juror in her case, no matter what, not after seeing the suitcase video. And regardless of whether she was winding it up or not, he probably got into the suitcase, in my opinion, he probably got into the suitcase on his own and thought this is, can you fit in there? Who knows how she got him in there or how she convinced him that, go ahead, get in. Let's just see if you fit, you know what I mean? Because she's got that personality that I'd be like, fine, just get her to shut up.
So normally jurors are told don't research the case and, don't talk about the case with your family and friends. But in this case, when we were going through the jury selection, a lot of the people who said that they had heard the details of the case and have seen the evidence said that they watched it on their local news, like how you are watching right now. So they actually asked jurors not to read the paper and not to watch their local newscast so that they don't see anything that's going on that would change their opinion. We'll send it back to you.
Stephanie, we hear there have also been some issues with getting clothing for Boone during the trial. How was that?
Yeah, so as you might remember, the trial did start, jury selection almost started last week before it was delayed midway. And there was a delay there because Sarah Boone can get her clothes. Now, this is important because her attorney doesn't want potential jurors to see her in that jail jumpsuit. They want her to be seen in normal clothes. So today she actually came out with the same outfit and jail slippers, as I mentioned. There's been an issue with getting her clothes. That was one of the big topics that her attorney spoke with the judge today, and they said that they seem to have worked that out.
All right, thanks a lot, Stephanie.
Oh, there you go. She finally got her clothes. She can stop bitching. I do know that they did tell her that she can't have her makeup. I have not looked anything up on P. Diddy at all. I think I'm going to stay away from that one just because, like I said, layers upon layers of that one. Seems scary. Alright, let's see, what else did I have? The cold case in Houston, documentary releasing, the FBI, Fresno man sentenced to 3 years in prison for series of vehicle pipe bombings. That sounds very scary. The firearms offense or violent crime. FBI prosecuted, that's crazy. So, well, I mean, they prosecute a lot. Rochester man pleads guilty to secretly recording a minor victim in the shower. Disgusting. You're a disgusting human being. U.S. Attorney Trini E. Ross announced today that Gregory M. Brooks, 53, of Rochester, New York, pleaded guilty to the receipt of child pornography before U.S. District Judge Franklin Jersey. The charge carries a mandatory minimum penalty of 5 years in prison and a maximum of 20 and a $250,000 fine. Assistant U.S. Attorney Nicholas Testani, who is handling the case, stated that in February 2021, Brooks secretly placed a video camera in a bathroom where he knew that a minor victim showered. He positioned the camera to capture naked videos of the minor victim entering and exiting the shower. Between February 2021 and August 31st, 2023, Brooks received and stored the videos of child pornography captured by the video camera on his cellular phone. February 2021 to August 31st, 2023. The plea is the result of an investigation by the Monroe County Sheriff's Office under the direction of Sheriff Todd Baxter. The Federal Bureau of Investigation under the direction of Special Agent in Charge Matthew Miraglia, and the Greece Police Department under the direction of Chief Michael Wood. Sentencing is scheduled for February the 6th, 2025. Holy crap. And that falls under the Project Safe Childhood under the FBI website. And their press releases for under the United States Attorney's Office. That particular one is for New York. Oregon man found guilty of assaulting law enforcement with a weapon and other charges during the January 6th Capitol breach. I'm not going to go over that one. I don't want to have anything to do with the politics of that right now. Montana man sentenced to prison on felony and misdemeanor charges for actions. Another one of the January 6th Capitol breaches. Sex offender sentenced to 10 years in prison on a child pornography charge. There's lots of those. Lots and lots of those. There's another one, 33 years in prison, 10 years in prison. Oxnard man affiliated with local gang is sentenced to 8 years in prison for narcotics trafficking. Protesters federally charged with assault on officers during the July 24th demonstration in Washington, D.C. Massachusetts man convicted of felony and misdemeanor charges for actions during the January 6th Capitol breach. Lots of that kind of stuff. Let's see what else. October 24th. Let's go to oh gosh, I'm scared to know what's on this case docket. Alright, definitely trigger warning on this one right here.
A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing.
The caption on this video is, "Mother arrested for allegedly leaving newborn baby to bleed to death on the side of the road." So, trigger warning.
Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Anna Garcia, and this is a special edition focusing on the death of a newborn baby girl who lived just a few hours, if that. 23 years ago, this little angel was left in a ditch on the side of the road in Johnson County, Texas. No one ever claimed her, and police were certain that someday they would get justice for this innocent baby that they named Angel Baby Doe. The case was cold, but not closed. And in the 2 decades that passed, DNA technology advanced to the point that her mother could be identified through forensic genetic genealogy, which has been perfected by those miracle workers at Othram Labs. Our guest today is David Middleman, the founder and CEO of Othram Inc., the world's leading DNA lab of its kind. And by the time of this recording, his scientists, and as I say, the miracle workers there, have helped to solve about 400 public cases and helped identify people in thousands of other cases. David, welcome back to the program. It is always such a pleasure to have you or your wife, Kristen.
Thanks for having us.
It's, I'm just, you know, I always say that I fangirl your science, but it has changed things so significantly for people and cases and families. And for those of you who are true crime buffs, which I know you are because you're listening, the piece in Texas Monthly is just outstanding. This profile on you, your wife, the company, a case, it's an extraordinary article, and I urge everyone to read it. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I love that the article really touches on the teamwork that's necessary and the diverse talents that we had to recruit to be able to bring this kind of value, not just to one case, but to every case.
Yeah, just amazing. And I know our regular followers know that you and your wife met while you were both working on your PhDs. And it's a wonderful family story. It is also a great story about science. And this case that we're going to talk about today, we always appreciate it when you bring us some of these cases because not every case gets an equal amount of attention. And this one, I think, deserves it because most people.
That's so very true. A lot of these cases don't even get looked at all because if they're not a high profile case or they're older cases or cold cases, a lot of times don't get looked at all.
Probably wouldn't have enough time to have a conversation about a little baby.
Yeah, every case is important to us, and Kristen and I, we have a large family ourselves, and we're always very sensitive to other families that have been disrupted through the loss of a family member or someone that's been affected by crime.
Yeah, and this one is heartbreaking. So as the result of your work at Othram Labs, you were able to identify the mother of the baby girl who was left in the ditch. Her umbilical cord was still attached, but had not been knotted or tied, which apparently led to more of a bleed out for the baby. So it's, when you think about it, it's a very horrific way for new life to end. So this happened back in November of 2001. The baby girl was found in a ditch south of Fort Worth by a person who was picking up cans.
November of 2001. November of 2001. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that long ago.
On the side of the road of Brer Oaks Road. And then the arrest comes in July of 2024, just recently. What is it about this case, David, that made your technology able to solve it to the point that we're at? And again, the mother is just charged, presumed innocent and charged.
Yeah, so this case is terrible. It's a 20-year-old case. So I believe the baby was found in 2001, and so in 2001 the technology to be able to sort through the identity for this child was not available. It's really in the last 5 or 6 years the technology has even caught up with the ability to work from forensic crime scenes, and the DNA in this case was degraded. As remains that were left, as you had noted, on the side of the road, not in pristine condition, and so by the time they made their way to our lab, the DNA was in terrible shape. And there's two parts to the problem here. One is that we've got forensic material that we need to work with. So this isn't like the good quality DNA that you get from a buccal swab when you do one of those consumer DNA tests. It's not the DNA you get from blood when you go to the doctor. This is DNA that's in trace amounts. There's bacteria, there's degradation because it's been exposed to the elements. And the second problem is the current forensic system that's used to help identify folks through DNA is based on the system called CODIS, and it's based on a DNA profile that has 20 markers. And if you were to commit a crime and be convicted of such a crime, then these 20 markers can be measured and loaded into this CODIS database. Should you end up at another crime scene, you can then be linked through CODIS. But how does CODIS bring value when you're when you're looking at a human remains case, when you're a baby that obviously has never done anything? Like, why would you even be in the database? And so that's the real challenge. Is you've got a system that is really effective at looking at repeat crime, but wasn't even designed. Not only is it not good at it, it wasn't designed from inception to really target the identification of human remains. It wasn't really designed to identify victims.
Right, wasn't it like, I was going to say that. It's probably not designed to identify the victims, it's designed to identify the people that are committing the crimes, or the people that are already in the system, because you want to catch the people that are doing the dirt. It wouldn't seem like it would be designed for innocent people.
Victims of crimes, and then on top of that, you've got DNA that's just imperfect and has a lot of complications that makes it hard to measure DNA markers. So our technology comes in by allowing us to identify people that are not in CODIS, so you don't have to be in CODIS to be identified. It works on a very wide variety of forensic inputs, even the most degraded DNA. And then most importantly, instead of 20 markers, we're collecting hundreds of thousands of data points, hundreds of thousands of DNA markers. And even if you're not in a database, we likely can connect you to a nearest relative or someone that might be in a database, even if they're distantly related. And so those three components are what allow us now to do what could not have been done in 2001 when the baby was found, which is to find the nearest relatives, build a family tree, and sort back and figure out who this child really was.
Yeah, that to me is amazing because, we don't know that much about the woman who is charged in this case, the woman presumed to be the mother who left the baby to die. So if she doesn't, like you said, if the mother or father didn't have a criminal record, where would you find their DNA? It's like you're doing everything in reverse here. So I did find it interesting when I read how many people, when they think they're helping to solve a crime, are very happy to help you with DNA samples if you're looking for people in family trees.
Yeah, it's incredible. Everything from, the origin of this case is interesting too, because the agency wanted to solve the case, but this technology is new, and this was a small agency, and they didn't even have funding for this case. So we actually crowdfunded this case on our DNA Solves platform, which I know we've talked about on previous episodes. And so the crowd, the kind strangers in the world have been instrumental from the beginning, not just in, necessarily contributing, reference DNA swabs to help us sort out the family tree, but even in the beginning, just to even fund the testing necessary to do the work to identify this child. And it's been a recurring thing in our work that there are an unbelievable number of people that just really want to help. and it's heartwarming. I feel like it's what the internet was meant for. It wasn't meant for all the stuff that happens now. It was meant for connecting these diverse groups of folks all over the globe towards some positive end. And if there was a positive end I could dream of, it would be this: being able to get everyone in their attention on a case that needs to be solved. Raising awareness, and then when the opportunity arises, because you may be a distant relative, but you may be a stepping stone in helping, sort out a family tree that helps identify a victim and get them back to family. People are just so excited about it, so genuine and so eager to help, and it's been probably one of the most rewarding parts to this job. Other than, of course, being able to then tell a family that we've been able to help, bring an answer to you and your loved ones. So it's unexpected, but it's the good kind of unexpected.
It is. What generally is an average time frame from the time that the agency, whichever investigative agency it is that brings you the remains, until you build all this out and do family trees and do the genetic testing? What's the time frame on that? And has that actually accelerated, gotten a lot faster as you've been building this incredible lab?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll answer it in two parts. We work active cases, and when we work an active case for an agency, we can build a DNA profile in days. So it literally just takes a few days. So, and I know that wasn't the case the last time we spoke, but we can build DNA profiles in days. And sometimes the genealogical component will resolve itself very quickly. You just get some good matches and you know who it is. Sometimes it could take longer, but the foundational profile to reveal those relationships can be built now in days, very quickly. Now, when we're working a case involving human remains or a case that has been cold for decades, we want to balance working as many cases as we can, and we want to make it as cost effective as possible. So the trade-off then suggests that to make it most economical and easiest, we take a little longer. So generally agencies will wait 4 to 6 weeks to get a profile if we're not in a rush. And if we're in a rush, we can do it, in a handful of days. Once that's done, we upload to the databases. And since the last time we've talked, Othram has since taken on the operation of the forensic search for family tree DNA's database. That's the biggest database available for these kind of suspect cases using forensic genetics.
To seek adequate medical care fail.
Definitely, until some answers can be resolved and provided for the family and those that were involved in the case.
It's a huge loss with so many repercussions, some of which you can't even see coming. Now, according to the indictment, Shelby recklessly caused her daughter's death by leaving her on the side of the road, failing to seek adequate medical care, failing to clamp the baby's umbilical cord, which of course caused her to bleed out. Now, here's what's also interesting, and there's a lot of discussion of this also on the sheriff's Facebook page. It was 2 years before this baby was dumped like trash, because really, that's what she was, She was just dumped. So in 1999, Texas was the first state to enact the Baby Moses Law, which identifies safe locations for young parents who cannot take care of their children, their babies, so they can be safely left in the care, like a lot of fire stations do this, of a professional, so nothing happens to the baby if you can't or don't want it. And this was available. As I read through the discussions, it's not like this was not available to the mother.
I remember that when it happened in 1999. I was, a lot younger than, obviously, it's many years ago. But I remember when that law came in, and we were all just like floored. Like, there are people out there that don't want their kids. There are people out there that just want to drop their kids off at a fire station or at a police station or with the CPS. It was just like, I couldn't fathom a mother wanting to do that or being able to drop her child off and just walk away. I couldn't fathom that even at, a young age like that.
Was an option, which she allegedly, she's charged with choosing not to. So she will be subject to the prosecution of laws that were in effect in 2001. According to reports, she remains behind bars on a $100,000 bond. It is unclear at the time of the recording of this podcast whether she has been able to enter a plea or if she has been able to get a bond. Now, the identification of Angel Jane Doe and the apprehension of her suspected killer is just like, again, one of the many cases that you all are working on. We thought that this one was a really important one to have a conversation about, because it's too easy for this not to be included in the conversation. It's maybe for some people not going to make a headline, but I think this baby needs to be honored and this case needs to be discussed.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, and it's just the way things are. There's disproportionate attention sometimes brought to a small handful of cases, but again, there are hundreds of thousands of cases, and even the most unknown case that doesn't make the evening news still has far-reaching consequences for so many people. And
absolutely.
So, I just can't emphasize. We've never worked a case made an identification and not have a big impact and a meaning to the folks that were there to receive the news. There's always someone waiting to know something about what had happened, and it feels terrible.
Just recently, speaking to that subject, jumping off of there, just recently I've come to the conclusion that about the disproportionate representation of cases. It's like, how do they get chosen? Which ones get chosen to be bigger, to be high profile, or to be noticed? Like, how do they gain that momentum and that recognition? Is it just social media? Do the parents reach out and keep on and keep on? Is it, just kind of a curious question.
Feels like the ultimate, the ultimate kind of punishment to never get an answer and not to know what happened to your loved one or what happened in a case. And so being able to provide that answer, it's very important to us. It's important that we can come back and say, look, the product of these years, and in this case, decades of investigative work was not in vain, and that we can actually help get to a bottom line and to an answer. And, in addition to helping provide those answers to kind of help keep the community together and assist in the investigation, law enforcement doesn't have limitless capacity to work all these cases. And every one of these cases takes time and money and effort, and it pulls resources. And there's a lot of other things that need to happen to keep society organized and in order in the real time. And so anytime we can help etch away at this backlog of unanswered questions, unsolved crimes, it's important that we do that as well, so that we can let people focus on contemporary issues as well.
Well, it's been such a pleasure, David. I'm always so appreciative of your time. I know how busy you all are, and we are just always so pleased and so thankful for you to make the time for us. So thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, I appreciate you making the time. I did want to point out also, you had referenced the Baby Moses laws, which some people also know as the Safe Harbor laws. Texas was the first state in the nation to enact those laws in 1999. And I believe by 2007, all the states had enacted laws. So, it's been more than a decade now that every state has some opportunity or avenue for which you can seek help. And I hope that messaging is made clear to everyone. There are options available. And I say this because there are too many of these cases. There are too many of these cases involving just young children or infants that have remained unidentified. Many of which, like this case, post-date the Safe Harbor laws. So I hope that this story also helps get the word out about the opportunities and possibilities that are available to those that can't support a child or want assistance in some way, so that they can find a way to resolve that.
Yeah. David, what's the easiest way for people to follow all of the amazing work that Optum does? Because you're releasing, solved cases or identifications practically every day.
Yeah. There's a lot of good news. I'm excited. The world's a complex place these days, and I love to be able to add a little bit of good news every now and then. And sometimes it's a few times a day. It's at least a few times a week. And you can follow us. Our website is authrum.com, but we're pretty active on Twitter or X, and we're also pretty active on Facebook. And so we try to get the word out whenever we can. If you come to our website, you can sign up for our mailing list and get, up to the minute breaking news when a case announces. Otherwise, follow us on social media. And
I definitely want to research this guy because I like the way he interacts with her, and I like the way he spoke about the case and the true respect that he seemed to have had for that. All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up for this evening. I really appreciate it and had a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do this more often. And Raid Shadow Legends if you haven't tried it. I am not a sponsor and not sponsored. So, anyway, hope to see you guys again soon. Thanks for hanging out with me, Hio.